How can you maximize your impact as a tester during requirements discovery sessions and discover more and better test cases faster for each and every story that you work on? In the next 5 minutes, I'm going to show you. I'm going to walk you through one technique that I personally use in requirements discovery sessions to make sure nothing gets left out of my test cases, and that helps reduce defects before the code even gets written. It's a variation of a BDD technique called example mapping. See, requirements discovery sessions are great, but sometimes it's hard to remember everything that got said. So requirements get forgotten, requirements get misunderstood, they get misinterpreted, and then the test cases we write are not quite what we need to do to verify that the code really works. Now, BDD techniques like example mapping and feature mapping are a great way to get around this. But the problem is they require practice and experience. They require a bit of know-how to facilitate those meetings, and you have to be in a position to run these meetings yourselves. If you're a tester in a Three Amigos or a requirements discovery session, and a technique like requirements, like example mapping is not being used, sometimes as a tester you just don't feel the authority to tell the rest of the team how to run their workshop, how to run their discovery session. So what can we do? Well, here's a super lightweight technique, really easy to do, that I use personally to get on top of these requirements discovery sessions when everyone's just talking all over the place. I use it to make sure that we ask the right questions, that we discover the right things, that we note down the right test cases, and that we end up with as many high quality test cases as we can. Let's have a look at how it works. So I want you to imagine this story. As a barista, I want to be able to manage the product catalog so that I can keep my store up to date and organized. Okay, so if we do this with example mapping, what would we do? Example mapping involves identifying the key rules and then identifying examples and counterexamples for each of those rules. And the advantage of doing that is that we can get a lot of clarity around what those rules mean by exploring these examples and counterexamples. And normally we do this with colored post-its. We have blue cards for rules and green cards for examples. But, and here's the trick, in a requirements discovery session where you've got lots of people talking, you don't need to use post-its. You can just write it down in text form. The first thing I do is write down the business rules that I know about. So in this particular case, what do we know? We know that the administrator should be able to add new products to the catalog. The administrator should be able to update existing product information and remove them from the catalog as well. The catalog should be organized and searchable, and the administrator should be able to categorize products and set up filters. So we have some business rules like that. Generally, we know a lot of these up front. They come with the acceptance criteria of the user story. Now, here's the trick. We have those rules and people will start talking about them. And what you want to do is you want to say, can you give me an example? So can you give me an example of when an administrator adds a new product to the catalog? So imagine that our administrator is called Ali. So we could come up with an example about when Ali adds a new brand of Colombian spiced coffee to the catalog. So let's write that down. Ali adds a new brand of Colombian spice coffee to the catalog. So that's our example. Now, there might be other examples. So there might be different brands of coffee that we want to add and so forth. But maybe they won't really change the nature of the requirement. So what we want to do is ask questions. What else could happen? So this is where our counterexamples come into play. This is what we call an example. But what about the counterexamples? What else could happen? So we could say, well, are there any situations where Ali is unable to add a new brand of coffee? And in that case, the product owner might say, but yes, there is one case. If the coffee is too expensive, then Ali won't be allowed to because she doesn't have the right permissions. And so we say, so that is a counterexample. we could say something like Ali tries to add a deluxe Colombian spice coffee, and we can ask, okay, so how much does that cost? It costs £20 per kilo, and that's too expensive, but isn't allowed to. And then that leads on to other questions. So whenever we have examples and counterexamples, particularly counterexamples, it often leads to other rules. So this question can lead to another rule. And so we've discovered a new rule. Administrators must ask or must have authorization to add coffee costing more than the price threshold. Doesn't matter so much. And then we could say, okay, well, actually this example, that belongs down there. So now we've got two business rules and some examples. So we continue this exercise until we have rules and examples or examples and counterexamples for each of our rules. And that's where we get our test cases. So any of these examples will now become a test case. We can write it at our leisure afterwards using a given when then notation if we want. But the key thing is these are our rules and our examples. We can get very good coverage here very quickly, even in quite a busy meeting. The last step of the process is simply to share these notes that you've taken, share these rules and examples, maybe tighten them up a little bit, maybe group them together, maybe structure them a little bit, share them with the participants of the meeting and make sure everyone is okay with them. Make sure that see if there are any outstanding questions that need resolving, circulate it around and get everyone to be on board with it. And that is a very lightweight approach, a lightweight take on example mapping that you can do in almost any meeting, but it's still very, very effective. So I really recommend give it a try. See how much more impact you can have as a tester in these discovery sessions.